Okay, so I am going to go through a few things in this ad hoc live stream on YouTube. The first thing I want to go through is to talk about where I think we are in the property market, where we are now, where we're going to be in the next 3, 6, and 12 months. Then we're going to have a look at what's going on in the latest HPI, which is the Rightmove HPI, which has just come out. And then I want to talk about why the house price indices are actually completely irrelevant in the first place, in terms of if anybody is looking at investing professionally or being a property professional, buying, selling to make profit, how it's completely irrelevant. And I want to give a few sort of pointers of how to do it properly, because there is so much debate out there. Whenever I go live and we talk about the HPIs, there's always the comments about, the HPIs are bullshit, they're all made up, or certainly when they're going up, when they're showing price increases, people say they're not worth the paper they're written on. However, when they're coming down, people go, here we go, here's the crash that we've been waiting for. I want to talk about why it doesn't matter. And then at the end, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about how to look at a set of accounts, especially the balance sheet, and trying to understand what you're looking at when you are, thumbs down already, when you are assessing other people's companies, because there's been a few comments about that on, it looks like that was the incorrect press of the thumbs down button. So the first thing I'm going to do is give you my overall macro picture of where we are in the UK property market. The reason I want to start with that, and I've got my phone here, so I've written everything out. I want to just talk through the bullet points of where I believe we are. The reason I want to do that is, as humans, we have a few mental tricks that our brain plays on us, or a sort of coping tactic strategies, if you like. One of them is called cognitive shortcuts. So to explain that, what we do is we see a headline, or we see a thumbnail, or we see a title of something, and our brain latches onto it. And rather than delve in and kind of, look under the hood, look at the substance of what's being discussed, we make immediate snap decisions based on one very small piece of information. It's called a cognitive shortcut, because there's so much information that is bombarded to us on a day-to-day basis. We don't have time to process it all. We don't have time to look through all the data. So we come to conclusions and internalize decisions based on these very small snippets of information. Now, one of the issues with YouTube is that the algorithm promotes people viewing, people liking, people clicking onto a video. The more clicks, the more likes, the more comments and engagement, the more YouTube is going to spread it. So therefore, and I will admit this, and I don't like having to do this, we have to have titles or thumbnails that attract people in to kind of earn the right to get eyes on the content that we're talking about. So very often, we do have sort of, as YouTube creators, I would say slightly clickbaity headlines. And the issue with that is sometimes it doesn't convey the full extent of the content we're going to be talking about. So for example, last time I put a video out, the title was confirmation of UK property market price trend. And of course, lots of people go, it's not confirmed, the HPIs are a load of rubbish, we're still going down. And if anybody actually watched that video, I didn't say we're going up and we're going to the races. I actually said that I think we're going to be going down over the next few months for the reasons I'm about to talk through with you. So what I'm going to do is, rather than go through all the data now, I'm just going to give you my overview macro picture so we can have a talk about it. So here we go. Here's my view of where we are in the property market right now. And I'll tell you why the clickbaity headline I put on today, why I was wrong. I want to draw your attention to the one bit of this that I think I was wrong at and have the ability to confess to that. So first of all, I deal with probabilities of possibilities, never absolutes. I never want to put figures on. I never want to say we're going to go down this much, we're going to go up this much. This is how many people are going to get repossessed. Anybody who's giving absolutes, right, is just guessing. And if they put enough guesses out there, then they can say, look, I predicted it correctly. If anybody watches any of my own old videos, you'll see I talk about probabilities of possibilities. And effectively what we have is we have a quantum of possibilities that could happen, a spectrum, if you like, of different outcomes. And I've talked about the three main categories of those outcomes. One is property market takes off again. One is we go into a longer, shallower correction, and the other is we go into full market meltdown. I've gone into a lot of detail about what I think will trigger a full market meltdown, and I do not believe we've achieved it yet, and we haven't seen a full market meltdown. I've said for the last year that I think we'll be in a longer but shallower nominal price correction in the UK housing market, but we will see a deeper and even longer dip in the real-time housing market, which is inflation-adjusted house prices. And so far, we are seeing at 100% that narrative play out. I also said, and about 9 months ago I said for the first time, I felt we would trough at the end of 2024. Okay, I thought we would trough at the end of 24 because inflation coming down, cost of living coming down, utilities coming down, and the tight labor market that is not suddenly going to, sort of implode or have a big influx of labor. So that was always going to prop it up. Now, we are not going to know if that's the case or not until the ONS figures come out, which is the actual data, even though that is selective. And because that's 6 to 9 months in lag, we probably won't know until mid to end of 2025 exactly when we are troughing, if we do trough at the end of 24. Now, it's possible we've troughed already, by the way. That's what I've been saying. I believe we're troughing at the end of 24. Now, I also said that the swap rates that we've seen falling, in fact, sorry, let me just bring out average. If I just bring up here, so I can demonstrate this to you, and I'll flick over. I should have had this prep beforehand. If we look at swap rates over the last year, and this isn't swap rates, this is average mortgage rates. When we peaked, and then we saw, a lot of people thought we might go higher in the summer of last year. We thought Bank of England base rate might go up to 6%. We then see the swap rates come down. And I've been saying since November, end of November, beginning of December 23, that because we've seen those swap rates come down, because mortgage rates have come down, that actually increases people's affordability in terms of what they can afford to borrow to buy property. So logic dictates that we'll probably see a pump or a boost or a rise in house prices in Q1 2024. Again, I believe that's exactly what we've seen. And right now we're seeing all the indices, Nationwide, Halifax, Rightmove, everything is showing a reversal in trend and house prices going up, whatever we believe about the indices, if we believe them or not, right? So I believe that is because of the swap rates coming down. Now what we're seeing is because inflation is more sticky, which we always said it was going to stick in Q1 24 when you look at the data in the rolling 12 months, right? We've now seen mortgage rates stick and start to rise again. So that will, again, logic will dictate, with everything else being equal, that over the next quarter to a half, we will probably continue to see, or we will see a reversal or a continuation into negative territory. But I believe it'll only be shallow negative territory. Okay, so I think for the next 3, 6, 9 months, we probably will see further nominal house price falls. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. Logic would dictate that it would happen. Okay, so this is where I think I got it wrong. Now, I fully admit that as of now, I would have expected higher nominal price drops, peak to where we are right now, than we have seen. Actually, when you look at the nominal price drops, they're not awfully lower than when they were the peak of 22. The reason that that's happened is because inflation has been higher and stuck higher for longer than I expected. Wage growth has gone higher. People have been pushing out the mortgages to increase affordability in terms of taking 30, 35, 40-year mortgages. And actually, even though nominal haven't dropped that much, we've seen a massive change in real. So again, if we just have a look at the real house price index, okay, so this is inflation adjusted by the Nationwide, right? As far as I'm concerned, that is a significant drop in terms of inflation adjusted house prices. So we have seen a considerable crash in inflation adjusted house prices, but we've not seen it so much in the nominal. And the main reason for that is the very strong labor growth. Now, we've had the Rightmove HPI out recently. I'm just going to go through this affordability part here, and this kind of paints a picture for you. Now, this is this green line here is the average monthly amount spent on a first-time buyer home with a 10% mortgage. You can see quite clearly we had a spike up, okay, came down again, and we had a second spike up, and that's come down again. So that means it's become more affordable. But this graph actually is more interesting and paints the picture. So sorry, if I start by zooming out, the teal line in the middle here is the average asking price, in brackets, first time buyer. The dark line at the bottom is 4.5 times salary. So what somebody can afford with 4.5 times salary with one person. And the yellow line at the top is 4.5 times salary for 2 people. So effectively what we are seeing here, right, is we are seeing a definite drop off in the average first time buyer asking price for a house, whereas we're seeing a continuation in uptrend of the purchasing power of somebody, and that's based on the strong nominal wage growth. So you can see, and I can't pen it, I'm afraid, but if we just look at the gap between, let's just say single salary, which is at the bottom, versus average first time buyer house price, with the teal, you can see that gap closing, which means people can afford more with the nominal in relation to house prices with their strong wage growth. Okay, if we have a look at the Halifax, I wanted to look at the nationwide. This paints an even better picture. Right, one of the key factors for me about house prices is the house price to earnings ratio. Now, again, when we look at where we've gone in 22, we were spiking up. We've come down considerably since then. So the effect of the high inflation, the effect of strong wage growth across the board, the lack of mass unemployment, we'll get back and talk about unemployment in a bit, and the stagnation of nominal house prices, not the slight drop of nominal house prices, actually done the effect of correcting house prices in terms of a ratio of earnings significantly. So we have seen a significant correction in house price to earnings ratio. It's there in black and white, unless you think it's a load of rubbish. Okay, so we're seeing it in multiple places, this difference. And again, it all feeds through to, right, if we look at inflation adjusted, real house prices, this is the real value of a house, a significant drop. So we have seen a significant drop in house prices. Okay, so that's another thing that I've said. So something that I've also banged a drum about is that we have a lot of fragility in the system. There's so many competing factors. When you look at house prices, you can't just say they're dependent on interest rates or supply and demand or people's purchasing, right? There's probably 1,000 factors that go into the mix that pull these things in every single direction. And they're all competing against each other. And nobody really knows what's going on in terms of where the trajectory is going to be, in terms of the very sort of small granularity with this. And the models, the HPIs are models. They've not been functioning with the lack of liquidity and the amount of transactions. And so they are flawed, they are skewed, but we can still look at them to get an idea of where the trends are, okay? And I believe that right now we are in an uptrend caused by the lag effect of the swap rates coming down in H1 2023. I believe very strongly that with swap rates coming up again and the mortgages coming up again, we'll probably see a ceiling on that, and the nominal house prices come down again. This could all change with various factors, and I've said repeatedly that I believe there is an asymmetric risk to the downside in the property market due to the fragility of where we are right now. It's just about holding on. But let's say we have a third-party external event, a black swan event that comes in, that could easily turn it into a full market meltdown. And I think that's what's needed to have a full market meltdown right now. When you look at the last house price corrections, 2008, right, was caused by systemic failure of the banking system that caused the entire, just the credit crunch. Mortgages were pulled, lending stopped, the market tanked. Before that, when you look at the correction of the late 80s into the early 90s, it was significant recession and mass unemployment. Right, we're in a completely different world to 89, 90, 91 in terms of how we are structured, but we're not the same as then. We are not seeing 10, 11, 12% unemployment. It's very difficult to understand where the unemployment actually sits because of 0 hours contracts, because of what is classed an employed person or a self-employed person versus somebody who is long-term out of work versus somebody who's unemployed. It's difficult to tell because there's not a lot of people responding to the surveys, which actually give the ONS the data in the first place. They're using experimental data, and the ONS and the Bank of England fully admit that they are running blind with this. But all the models they are using say we're pretty much almost at no unemployment still. So even though we are seeing an increase in company liquidations, which I admit, even though we are seeing business failures, we always see business failures. Of course, we're going to see a tick up in business failures and liquidations. We've gone from 0.1% interest rates, central interest rates, to 5.25%. That's going to put a lot of strain on a lot of businesses. But that doesn't mean that we're on a cataclysmic recession meltdown with 10, 11, 12% genuine unemployment out there. I'm just not seeing it right now. And if somebody wants to show me otherwise, with empirical data and evidence, I'm happy to take a spear on that and have a look at it, but I'm just not seeing it. My scaffolding business, right? We had a quiet Q4. We had a slow start to January, but we are flying right now. The house builders are all coming back and breaking ground, right? We've just taken on 2 significantly large new build sites, timber frame new build sites. I've had to go and get a finance facility to buy a whole load more kit to service these sites. And my anticipation will be that the house builders are thinking, if we break ground now, we're going to be selling in Q2, Q3, 2025, at which point we've probably had a reduction in interest rates. The market's probably at least bottomed and people are coming back. That's that's anecdotal. Okay, so I do still believe though there is asymmetric risk to the downside, more risk to the downside than the upside. However, as I said, we're not there yet. So I've talked about that. The final thing was, well, I've said it already, that the HPIs are models. I can see a lot of comments coming in, by the way, team. I will come back to those comments after I go through the exercise I'm about to do and sort of go through them all with you, because I'm always keen to talk about what you're seeing on the shop floor, what you're seeing in your markets. But I want to talk about how to look at this professionally rather than just taking a look at the house price indices. And if we go to let's go to Rightmove. Okay, so that's a rubbish thing. There's no real figures on there, is there? We have seen quite a large, so it's 1.5%. There we go, 1.5% rise in asking price. Don't forget, this is asking price, listing price. Rightmove is traditionally unreliable with this. It could be lots of bigger properties coming to the market, but it could just be that people are having a load more confidence, right, and getting back into it. We always then talk about, look, these HPIs on a national level are a load of rubbish. We need to look at a regional level. And I agree with this. So if we look at the regions, right, actually, in terms of asking price, Scotland green, North East green, Yorkshire Humber green, East Midlands green, North West green, West Midlands green, East of England is a minus 0.2% year on year, London green, Wales green, South West and the South East are negative year on year. So we've seen the biggest adjustments in the South, London, South East, South West. I get it. There are regional variations. If we look at Halifax, did that have the regional variations? I don't think this did have the regional variations in it. But when we look in detail on Halifax, it does talk about regional variations. Again, you look at the South, completely different in terms of year on year to UK as a whole, or Scotland, Northern Ireland, which is skewing things. That said, right, these figures or these graphs look weird. That, as a recovery, is weird. There's no bottoming pattern. I would expect a bottoming pattern. So I fully anticipate these models are being skewed with what we're seeing right now. Same with Rightmove. When we look at the price and activity trends, if we go to the similar thing with asking price trends, there's no bottoming pattern. We're seeing a bit of a V recovery, and I would expect usually to see some form of bottoming pattern. So I'm not sitting here and saying that these HPIs are completely accurate. I think we're still massive lack of liquidity out there, which is skewing the figures. But the trend right now, when you look at the data, is that there are more properties coming to the market. There are more sellers coming into the market, searching value. And because we're seeing the market unfreezing or thawing, if you like, I suspect we will see more people hit the market with a perception of, hey, look, interest rates coming down. Now's the time to start listing. That influx of properties would likely see more downward pressure on house prices. An influx of properties, more activity, does not mean that activity is all going to go up. I foresee a further down pressure on prices by more supply, or supply outstripping demand. And actually, when we look at, did I get it on? Sorry, I had it set up, but it's not there now. If I go RICS residential, there we go. If we go to the RICS residential survey, if my internet will play ball, I'm going to download it now, aren't I? So this is the latest RICS residential survey. And it's interesting to see, again, the trends. And I just want to go to sales market chart. That's national prices, not so keen about that. Here we go. So national inquiries, right? We're now seeing a positive on the national inquiries. New vendor instructions. We are seeing, right, if you go here, this line that you're seeing in the middle is quite a significant uptick in terms of new listings, right? Which means more supply coming onto the market. Now, if we look at that versus, that was listings, new vendor instructions, there was here's national inquiries. So here's the inquiries, i.e. this is the buyer side. You can see we're in the positive, but it's not nearly as much as the listings, right? So that to me shows we are now, for the first time in a while, seeing an increase in supply of stock versus buyer demand. And again, logic dictates that we'll see a continuation of nominal house price drops as there's more stock, less buyers. Buyers can be more choosy. Buyers can go for the good deals, right, and negotiate the good deals because there's more stock out there. So that's something that's interesting to talk about. But I want to talk about now why I think the whole sort of looking at this big picture, and even, right, when you go to the RICS, it's all broken down by region. Why, if you're doing this professionally, none of this matters. It's completely irrelevant, okay? Because the UK property market is an interesting beast. It's not a national market. It's not even a regional market. It's a market that is almost fragmented on a street-by-street basis. So if you are professional property person, investor, developer, right? This is how the grown-ups do property. You're not going to be looking at any of those charts I've just gone and use that as your buying decision. I want to give you a few sort of insights as to how specific this is when you're doing it for a living, right? So if we come over here, and this is primelocation.com. This is a heat map of property values. Obviously, the hotter an area is, the more expensive the location. I'm going to zoom in on my local investing area. So I invest in Chester and the surrounding areas. So if I come over here, right, and I zoom in here, you can see this is one town in one area of the UK, and you can see completely different colors all over here. So we've got an area over here which is blue. This is a lower value area. We've got another area down here, blue, lower value area. We've then got an area here that's yellows and reds, okay? And again, we've got areas here that are yellows and reds surrounded by blues. So if we zoom in even more, right, let's go down here. Right, the dynamics of the property market will be completely different on these streets compared to these streets. And this is literally a 5-minute walk from each other. So you have to, I call this, when I teach this to my clients, by the way, I call this microscaping. This is not something I usually talk about on the YouTube channel. This is, very granular way of looking at property. It's very difficult to kind of dive in and have a look at this sort of stuff. Because of course, when I focus on a specific area, 99.99% of people who are watching this are like, well, that's not my area. So I don't particularly care about what's going on between Curzon Park and Leish and Chester. Whereas we can look at the trends on a macro level when we're talking through that data. So the point is we need to understand the areas on a street-by-street basis. And when we're looking to buy property and assess what's going on with property, we don't care about listing price. We don't care about discounts on listing price. I've had a lot of comments on videos of people saying, oh, look, you need to do your research better because just open up Land Registry and you can see properties with a 20, 30, 40% discount. Based on what? Okay, this is always my question that comes back. A discount based on what? On listing price? Because listing price is irrelevant, right? As a professional, we only care about sold comparables. And when we're actually going into even more detail about it, what we really care is about sold price per square foot of a property in terms of sold values. So we're breaking down properties on a square foot basis. What's that worth? What's it been selling for? And then what can we buy? Are we going to be buying it more than that? We're going to be buying it less than that. And that shows the direction of trend of a local property market. And that's the only thing that we really care about. Another thing to caveat here is, yes, for sure, right? I'm sure there are people who are selling their properties 20, 30, 40% below market value, or not market value, below listing value. But I'm also sure there are people who are selling it that much below market value, because there will always be forced sellers out there. In a ragingly hot market, you still find forced sellers that for whatever reason have to sell their properties below market value to get a quick sale. In a dropping market, you'll still find people who probably manage to sell their properties over the market value because of various reasons. So again, we have to disassociate the fact that, number one, people are buying below listing price, and number two, people can buy below market value in any market and understand what's going on in the local market. So here's a couple of tools that I use. One is this is called property data. So if I come over, in fact, let's just start from the beginning, right? If I go into here and I put Chester in, it might just say, let's go Chester City Centre. Let's have a search, reset it to a circle and let's put a 4-mile radius around it. Okay, so if I wanted to analyze what's going on in my local area, I would first of all geo-bound the area I'm looking at. I would have a look at the data that's actually happening. Now, this is real, as accurate data as you can, and we have both asking prices and sold prices. Now, I don't particularly care about asking prices. They're irrelevant. I want to understand what's going on in the local area with sold prices, okay? And using a tool like this, property data, and by the way, if anybody wants to have a play with this, there's a link to get a free trial in my bio. We can break down in that specific area what prices are, averages, and then sort of 80th percentile, 20th percentile ranges, we get rid of the outliers to have a look at what things are actually selling for. Okay, see the cluster, see the spread. And if we're doing it really properly, we're going to want to break it down by £1 per square foot, right? So I know in Chester, and I know this like the back of my hand, an average price per square foot has been between 270 and 300 for the last few years. So before COVID, it's probably 270. Now it's probably about £300 per square foot in terms of average. This is showing us at the moment that sold data is £285 per square foot. So when we're now assessing our properties, we want to assess it by this pounds per square foot, break it down and compare apples with apples. So how do we do that? Right, here's another tool that I use. This is called Property Filter. If I go back into, if I go into this, effectively what this does is it picks up properties that have motivation to sell based on various trigger points. I've got various lead generators in here. Again, if you want to play around with this, there's a link in my bio that you get a 2-week free trial and a discount on the first month. But effectively, we're looking at motivated properties. And let's say I want to have a look at this particular property here. I can have a look at the price. I can see this last sold for a long time ago, 96 for 87 or 88,000 pounds. I can see it's had a price drop from 375 to 365. I can see it's been on the market, been off the market, been on the market again. But what I really care about is not the listing price, which is 365. Okay, I want to understand what's going on in the neighborhood. So again, we've got lots of market data. We can see what the averages are in terms of a sale. We can see what the averages are in terms of rent. If I have a look at the comparables, and again, this is really sort of important stuff to be able to do. It's going to show me in the local area the other properties of similar size, and we can filter this based on bedrooms, based on square footage, based on detached, semi-detached. So we're comparing apples with apples. I go to last sold, and if I go down here, it gives me a list of all the last sold comparables broken down to a price per square meter, broken down to an EPC, so I can immediately see what things are selling for and then understand if I'm buying stuff for lower or more expensive than that. Okay, so let's just say the average. So it gives me here an average price per surface area of £3,058 per meter squared. So I can now assess if I'm looking to buy anything. That's the average. Of course, we might want to delve down even deeper to go, right, what's the average on this street or that street, or, for this type of property, be it a flat, something like that. And this is the granularity that we need to go into to truly understand what's going on in a local area, right? Are prices going up? Are prices going down? And if we're starting to see a trend, let's just go back to property data over here, right? If we're starting to see a trend, because we can filter this by, we can go the last 6 months. In fact, let's just have a look. Let's do this, right? So the last 6 months, the average price is 284. The last 12 months, it's 285. So it's pretty much stagnant, right? When you look at it. Let's go the last 2 years. 283. Let's go the last 5 years. This is going to now bring us data pre-COVID as well, right? You can see it's lower, 262. So you can see it's pretty much stagnated for the last couple of years in the local area in terms of price per square foot of sold. Now, yes, I know you're going to be saying there's a lag in the data. There is a lag in the data, but we can only go so far, with this exercise. But we can have a look at the growth, because this is going to interpolate all of this and give us our 5-year price growth to understand in that local area, in that geo-bounded area that I've sort of gone for. We can see what the trends are happening in terms of that local area dynamic. So I can see right now, we are on a downtrend in Chester. It's going to tell us, we've got so much data here that we can play with. My point is, right, HPIs are irrelevant if you're doing this professionally. We need to understand and look at the data on a micro level, a microscape level, to understand what's going on in our local area, and if we're buying things below the market value or above the market value, and where the trend is going. So I hope that's a little insight as to kind of, if you're doing it properly, if you're doing it as a professional, all these HPIs are totally irrelevant, right? You need to understand what's going on. By the way, that was just a little insight to the residential market. When you're looking at things on a commercial valuation basis, it's completely different again. I'll give you an example. One of the reasons I've been live that much recently is I honestly, since coming back from Christmas, I've never been busier in my property business. I started this channel last year. I was actually pretty quiet last year, kind of twiddling my thumbs a little bit. There was not a lot going on. I wasn't buying. I bought one property last year, but wasn't particularly active because we were in that sit on your hands sort of regime. We were seeing nominal price drops, bigger real-time price drops. Interest rates could have gone through the roof. It was, I'm not going to be buying huge amounts unless they're really good deals with potentially interest rates going up to 6%. But we've come away from that now. We've kind of come over the peak of that. The forward-looking projection is that interest rates are coming down, will come down in a gradual process. And that gradual process will be dictated on inflation, and most crucially, wage growth, which is why I think they're not going to come down as quickly as people are hoping they'll come down. The only caveat to that is if the economy does go into meltdown, we'll probably see interest rates plummet to save the economy, but we're not there. And that's why the bank don't need to ratchet them down quickly. Now they will have to, because the longer they stay up here, the more strain it's going to put on the economy, right? And they don't need to grind it over a long period into the ground, but they also need to be careful about, just releasing the shackles. Because if they do suddenly dial interest rates down, I can feel there's a lot of pent up money just sitting there ready to pour back in, which of course we'll see everything go back up again in terms of inflation. So look, I've kind of rabbited on quite a lot on that. I apologize for that. I feel like it was almost a little bit of a rant. In terms of sorry, I had some comments, and I think one of the great things about being out in the public space, or not one of the great things, I think one of the things about being in the public space and creating a narrative is you have to expect people to challenge you on what you're doing, and I embrace people challenging me on what I'm saying, what I'm talking about. But I hope you don't mind that when people do come and challenge me, that I come back with actual granular explanations of why I think the way I do, because I do not class myself as a YouTuber. I'm a property professional. We've got 3 deals going through that I've agreed offers on in the last 4 weeks. Okay, that's three property transactions going through. Very busy time at the moment, which is why I've been kind of busy and not spending lots of time on YouTube, because just doing the job right. And I do know that somebody, Stephen, hello. I know you asked about company accounts, and obviously, question the credentials to be able to sit here on YouTube and talk about this sort of stuff as a expert, whatever an expert is. If anybody ever wants to just go open source and go into Company's House, right, you can see company accounts on Company's House. Just put my name in. It's Robert Stewart, right? And you can find my companies as long as you find me. There's probably other Robert Stewarts out there. I'm not afraid of this. The thing that I would caveat and caution, because I saw a lot of people talking about Charlie. And by the way, I just want to say, somebody called me out and said I'm obsessed with Charlie because I was talking about the minus 35% or minus 37% prediction. I just want to say right now that in all the other YouTube sphere, Charlie's the person I would respect the most and would most like to go out with a drink for. I don't actually know Charlie. I've never met him. I'd be delighted to meet him. I agree with everything he says, other than the extreme of the price swings. I know he talks about it being an average, not over a year, but over the whole peak to trough, which could be 5 years, for example. And I don't disagree with that. I disagree with the nominal amount. I can't see from here, with the balance of probabilities, us being anywhere near 30-35% peak to trough, on average. But the world has changed over the last 18 months, so there's no criticism. But anyway, my point is, I saw people talking about Charlie's accounts. The problem when you go onto Company's House and find filed accounts is they are abbreviated accounts, which show a snapshot of a balance sheet in a period of time. And a snapshot of a balance sheet in a period of time is a completely notoriously unreliable way of assessing a company, right? When you own limited companies, you run lots of costs. There's lots of accountancy practices that go through, submitting accounts, for example, deferred tax liabilities, accruals, creditors, which are your own loans, directors' loans, your own companies loaning stuff, are actually creditors, reduce stuff on the balance sheet. Capital allowances, something we teach. You can buy a property and get hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of capital allowances, which then sit as effectively a credit on your balance sheet. So reduces what looks like net assets, depreciation, amortization, so many things that completely skew what is a balance sheet, which is a snapshot of what the company owns. Doesn't show anything to do with company performance. Doesn't show anything to do with turnover, profit margins, cash flow. It's just a snapshot of a balance sheet, right? So if anybody ever wants to, go and have a look at this sort of stuff, just Google or just go onto the Company's House website, stick in my name, right? I'll bring this up so you can see it. Stick in my name. Go and have a look at any of the companies I have, right? If there's any doubters, as I said, I'm not a YouTuber, I'm a property person, and have a look. But understand what you're looking at. So, for example, if let's find my main holdings, well, one of my holdings companies. Where's it gone? Can't even find it anymore. Let's actually put the company in then instead. And I'm not afraid to do this live on YouTube. There we go. So if you ever want to go and have a look at these things, right, go into the company, go into the filing history. You will find these sort of small micro accounts which you can just have a look at, right? But just understand what you're actually looking at. So this is one of my companies. This is one of my properties holding companies. So let's just zoom out on that one. So you can see, have a look at it, see what you think is in there. You need to understand things like, what are these creditors? Okay, who are the debtors? What is this? What is this creditor here that's over a year, which is a bank loan? How are these values actually derived at? Okay, so this is giving a net shareholders funds in this one company, right? You can delve into it a little bit more deeply, but this doesn't give any indication at all of turnover, of profit, of cash flow. This company could be doing £10 million a year turnover. It's not, but it could be, and it could be taking out 10 million. Or to give you another example, let's just go for, again, if you go to a company, you can find the officers, you can then find me and find all my other companies. If I show you another one of my property holding companies, this one here, just to show you through it again. You can see this particular one has got a much higher gross asset value in terms of the properties it holds. But you can see there's a large amount of creditors falling due within 1 year. Now, those figures, right, are my loan, like director's loan into the business and loans from other ones of my companies into the business. So you might look at that and go, oh, there's not as many shareholder funds down there at the bottom. Well, it's because there's a negative, credit against this for my own money that's been lent into the business. So it really is important to understand things when you look at balance sheets. Just to tie this one off, another one you could look at is, let's just go back here. If we go to my scaffolding business, so let's go to this one here. Let's go to the accounts on this one. And by the way, the accounts are generally a year to a year and a half out of date anyway, because that's just how it works. You can see this one is not showing an awful lot of tangible assets, right? This company owns hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of scaffold equipment, but it's all been depreciated off the balance sheet. So this is what I mean about looking at accounts that are on Company's House and coming to conclusions about what businesses actually do. But feel free to have a look if it's of interest, and if you sort of want to check credibility. I think it's important for anybody who puts himself out in the public space like YouTube to be open book about it, and feel free to check the credibility. And if you think I'm full of BS, fine, let's have a chat about it. Cool. That is what I have for you today, team. So let's have a quick look at any questions as we go through. I can see there's quite a lot of comments, so I'm not going to go through every comment. I'm going to pick out some questions or statements to see if it challenges what I talked about or backs up what I talked about. So let's put this. So Mark, why has that gone really small on the screen? I wonder if I can make that bigger. Give me a sec, Mark. Oh, there we go. It's gone. It's text box shrink. Let's go. No, don't want to do that. Somebody's been fiddling with my settings. Nope. Sorry. I just have to read it. My bad. How do I make? Oh my gosh! It's all gone. It's all gone wrong. There we go. Let me just make it a little bit bigger like that. That's good. That's going to work, isn't it? That's going to work. Let me drag it around. So Mark says the amount of properties in your area, South Yorkshire, booming on Rightmove. Can tell the government's advice worked for a while. Evictions coming soon. Defaults, the forbearance rules coming to an end. Yep, it's a great point. The forbearance has definitely been part of the melting pot that's propped things up. It'll be interesting to see when forbearance comes to an end what does happen. And if anybody doesn't know, forbearance is the 12-month grace period, if you like, that banks have agreed in the charter with the government not to start the eviction process when people come into arrears. When we look at the arrears and possessions data, we can see arrears have gone up, possessions have come down because of forbearance. There's been no doubt that arrears have gone up. We would expect it with the interest rates doing what they're doing. We've seen it much more in the buy-to-let market, by the way, than the residential market. So that'll be interesting to see. And I agree, Mark, that'll be interesting to see. The point is, I think you've said, booming on Rightmove is kind of going to what I'm saying, that it's a perception thing, that people have a perception of being able to afford more because mortgage rates come down. Therefore, for the same monthly payment, you can actually get more of a loan. And, you look at mass media, everybody's talking about property market turning a curve, turning a corner. You look at the HPIs, it is without a doubt, if you're uneducated, you look at it all and go, wait a minute, property prices are on the rise again. Let's pile in. Which I said would probably happen. I talked about perception, how perception moves the masses. I know a couple of people disagree with me. They're like, perception's irrelevant if you can't afford stuff. Well, the point is you can afford more because your income's gone up, right? And mortgage rates have come down. So you actually can afford more. So the perception is there and people can afford more. So they're piling in. Probably without the realization that I would suggest we're going to see further price slips. Not massive unless we see that black swan event, but there will be further price slips this year. Urban says house prices have not fallen as far or fast due to inflation and lack of transactions. There have been no forced sellers and no one who can afford the house prices. Urban, I think we're in total agreement with that. Appreciate your comments. Let's just follow up with this one that Urban puts on because I totally agree with this. Shocked to see that the real value of homes had not increased in 20 years. We're all poorer thanks to that money printing. So I could not agree more with this. I just want to really stress this point actually. If we come back over to the iPad, sorry, I'm just going to take your comment off. This graph, which is real house prices, right? If you see where we are at the moment, which is the end of Q4 2023, we're obviously about to come to the end of Q1 2024. So we'll see the next tick on the graph, next point on the graph come out probably about a month or so. You track that back to the left. I wish I could draw on this, but we're pretty much the same as we were. I know you can't see it, but I'm trying to put it right in the middle and then drag it up so we can see the date. About 2002, right? If we draw that up. In terms of real house prices, they are worth roughly the same now in terms of inflation adjusted as they were in 2002. Which, as Urban quite rightly says, is a big function of the money printing, quantitative easing, and the inflation. And that is why, by the way, I do say to people that your home and the wealth stored in your home should not be viewed as a store of wealth. We in the UK are fixated with property as a store of wealth. I believe that is a really dangerous thought process to have. And when the gurus, right, get on and say invest into property because it doubles every 10 years, actually that's even though you can skew the statistics to make it look like that's correct, it's actually, yes, if you average it for the last 70 years, it is correct. But if you look at the last 30 years, completely incorrect, by the way. But the reason I always say property shouldn't be seen as a store of wealth is in real terms, right, when you look at that, and this doesn't mean it won't reverse, doesn't mean it won't change. At some point, we could well see a big increase in real house prices. I would suggest not in the next 2 years, but in the next cycle, we might see it, right? If you go back to this and look at, in fact, that's an interesting exercise, right? Let's look at real house prices from the peak in late 80s, yeah, which is the small peak over, just the left-hand side of the graph. And then you see it was a seven-year decline in real house prices to sort of 95, where it troughed in real house prices. Then 95 to 2006-07 saw a monumental increase in real house price inflation. Like huge. If you see that, that's gone from what, 130,000 to 340,000 in roughly a 10-11 year period. Massive increase. Since then, we've not just stagnated, we've reduced, right? So we had the crash. The crash brought it down in 2008, and then really we've stagnated from there. So when everybody says post-COVID we had this massive boom, when you look at it, inflation-adjusted prices, it's kind of just a tiny little uptick, actually, we haven't, that post-COVID boom was nominal, but not in real-time house prices. And we've now seen a fairly significant correction. So from, what's that? From sort of 2009, 10 to now, we're pretty much flatline on a macro level, if not lower. Well, we are lower. Doesn't mean that, you know, we won't see. If you look at that graph, I would say what we are seeing now is more akin to late 80s, early 90s correction than 2008, which was systemic banking failure. So you never know. We could see a bottoming pattern for, you know, 4, 5, 6 years, and then the next cycle could see a massive increase in real house prices. I would imagine we probably will see a big uptick in real-term house prices at some point over the next decade, or, you know, resumption of it. But the point is, I'm talking about like 5, 6 years, decades. These are long cycles, and in the meantime, if you own a house and you live in it, and you pay to service, you know, mortgage interest and maintenance and all of that sort of stuff, and it's actually eroding in value, you could have put your money in other places, which is why I view property as a cash flow mechanism, not a store of wealth. Cool. Let's see. We've got Mark. So I can see a question there, Mark, but I can't remember the context of it. Let's put this on. Interesting comment here. Bornak, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. What if Sunak ousted and replaced by Mordaunt, followed by another mini budget that spikes gilt yields? Black Swan. Yeah. So that is the sort of thing that would be a Black Swan event. And this is what I mean about there being fragility in the system. We just don't know what's around the corner. I don't think anybody predicted the mini budget in 2022 and how that would affect things so much, right? But it did massively. Yeah, could be, you know, could still be Middle East, you know, tinderbox, could be Russia, Ukraine, you know, it could be escalation of Houthi rebels, that you know, could be something that the point of a Black Swan is nobody sees it coming. So actually, I'd suggest everybody's looking almost, people are almost searching to go, there's the Black Swan, because there's, sorry, you're going to get me on one now. Sorry, team. So I talked right at the beginning about the principle of cognitive shortcuts, which we take when we don't have the time to fully absorb all of the actual information. So we go on a headline or a soundbite and internalize that. And I use the word internalize very specifically because what we do is when we see a narrative and we see it with our own eyes, we internalize it. And when we internalize a decision, it's very difficult to change our minds. Even when we see contradictory data, if that data is in conflict to our internal decision, our internal value set, our internal compass, if you like, we'll go out and find selective data to disprove, you know, the predominant trend or theme or, you know, data that we're looking at. And without a doubt, over the last 18 months, all the talk's been about property market crash, with some fairly big figures talked about. It's not manifested yet, but there's a lot of people who I feel have internalized the fact it has to be crashing, right? It just, interest rates are high, economy is crap, the market has to be in free fall, and are internalizing that, and therefore going out and seeking information to back up that internalization, if that makes sense. Very difficult to change your mind, by the way, when you've internalized something. Very, very difficult. So I feel a lot of people are almost looking for that Black Swan event, going, oh, it's going to be Middle East, it's going to be, you know, shipping, it's going to be Russia, Ukraine, it's going to be whatever it is, almost trying to find that event to go, that's it, this is the thing that's going to take us over the edge. The chances are it's actually going to be something, if there is a Black Swan event, it's something that nobody's even looking at, right? We're all looking over there at Middle East, and it's going to come from over there, right? We have no idea. If it does happen, and, you know, there is a theory that a Black Swan event happens roughly every decade or so. Personally, I think COVID was it. You know, that was a unprecedented event. And of course, we then had, you know, all the market manipulation to cushion that blow. But it was a Black Swan event, completely different to, you know, 2008, for example. And then the one before that was probably 9/11. So, I mean, saying that, we're 4 years on from the C word, aren't we? So you never know. I don't know. Regreen, prices haven't corrected from the artificial boost during COVID. Well, there we go. Yes, you're right. So, it's interesting. I think there's that QE event was so significant. There was so much money pumped into the system. And actually, a lot of that money that's pumped into the system has ended up sitting with the rich, the wealthy, the sophisticated, who know what to do with it. And I think a lot of it's just sitting there ready to come back in. There we go. Car porn, this guy says a lot about nothing. Well, go and watch something else then. Why are you sitting here through hours worth of my live analysis if you're not interested? Brody, the huge problem is that affordable homes simply not being built. Correct. In fact, I was reading something very interesting. I'm going to tie up in a little bit about house building. How actually house building is not the issue. There's plenty of housing stock out there. So I'm going to do a bit of analysis because I've always said that supply and demand is not the issue. Interest rates are a much bigger factor in house prices than supply demand. Yes, of course, supply demand does affects more on a local area basis. The issue is, so right now in the UK, we have almost 700,000 empty units, almost 700,000 empty properties in the UK, sitting empty, nobody in them, right? What we actually have is a supply and demand imbalance for affordable homes and a supply and demand imbalance for people actually having, the ability to rent stuff or all of that sort of stuff or buy stuff. So it's not that there's a lack of stock; it's a lack of availability to people to buy it. But I'm going to do a bit more research on that, and we can talk. We talk about that. There we go. I'm trying to buy a house listed for $895. We offered $865, and the seller said no. They have no other offers after multiple viewings. It's a 5-bed by primary school. Frustrating. Sellers 65 plus. So the problem is, let me just put this on. The problem is in this scenario is they're not motivated. They don't need to sell at a discount, and this is the issue. This is what's propping everything up. Is we are not seeing the forced sellers that would tip the market into into meltdown. If they're elderly, 65 plus. They probably haven't got a mortgage on it. They're probably just sitting on it. The bills have come down again. They're not motivated. Why would they need to sell at a reduced rate if they don't need to sell, right? They can probably wait, weather it out for a couple of years, and then try at a higher price. So when I'm working with my clients with finding properties to buy at a discount, it's all about vendor motivation and vendor circumstance. And we've got various mechanisms we can use to do that. So again, if just to give you an example, right? When I use platforms like property data, which I love, by the way. Okay, so if I come up here to the leads generator, so we can just basically create lead generators based on different factors, different filters. So if I'm looking at things to flip, right, and I'll go and check the leads, it's then going to list it, or it's going to list properties. You can see here properties that are back on the market and they've been reduced. So there's 60 in the area, properties that are back and been reduced. And if let me sort this by biggest, most reduced. Here we go. Let's filter by most reduced. There are going to be some anomalies in here. I'm pretty sure. This one here has been reduced by 30%. Right. Let's have a look at it. Let's show you the details. So this property reduced by 30%. We look for something called the ladder of price history. So you can see here we've got a ladder down in terms of the price history. This big red blob here means it was off the market. Probably means it was sold subject to contract, which then fell through. So you can see it listed at $500,000. Came down to 475, dropped to 450, probably went under offer for whatever reason, fell through, which is kind of summer last year, and then it's dropped a few times. So that has a significant motivation to sell. Now, what we now need to do is understand what is that motivation, what are the circumstances, and how can we then effectively leverage that to craft an offer that the vendors would want to go with. So fantastic platform to use. By the way, if you want to. In fact, it's not that one, it's this one. If you want to give that a go, right, just use that. I think that's actually the wrong link. So maybe don't use that. I'll put it. Go to the description of this video. You'll find a link in it, which gives you 2 weeks free to have a play around with this tool. Okay. Perfect. All right, team. Look, there's too many to go through. But thanks very much for all the comments. We'll go live tomorrow because what do we have? We've got something coming out tomorrow. ONS data is being released tomorrow for January. So I'll be interested to see what the ONS, I suspect it will show a correction down, ONS, because it's probably 6 to 9 months in lag. But look, it's great to see everybody. Great to have a chat. Sorry, I went a bit ranty. Feel free, by the way, if you're still here an hour into and you haven't subscribed yet, guys, we're on the route to 4,000 stepping stone to 5,000. Please, if you get benefit from this, car porn clearly doesn't, so apologies, car porn. if you don't want to continue watching. Plenty of other channels you can go and watch that are full of absolute BS that can be indulged with. But if you do find value from this channel, the more you like the videos, subscribe to the channel, the more YouTube gives reach. My regulars know that I'm on a mission to help empower people to make better decisions based on what's actually going on rather than the BS that's out there in the mainstream media. Please, if you do watch this regularly and you haven't yet, please subscribe. Please help out, get more reach to more people. I will see you soon. Cheers, Dino. I will speak to you probably tomorrow or Thursday to talk about the ONS data. Have a good one, team.